And good afternoon, everybody. This is Tony Fapiano coming to you from the studio at Guilford Community Television. I have with me guests and representatives from the Guilford Preservation Alliance. Guilford Preservation Alliance is an organization in town that we're going to hear about, but also we're going to hear about a special project that they're currently involved in. So I'm going to start by introducing our guests. To my immediate left is Shirley Girioni, who is co-president of the Guilford Preservation Alliance. Student and participant in the walking tours, I understand, Megan Vanacore. Next to Megan is Dennis Colleton, and Dennis is a teacher in the Guilford school system. He's an expert on Civil War, I understand. We'll find out more about that.
Sure.
You don't look old enough to actually know. No, you weren't there then.
He wasn't participating.
But be that as it may, you are a board member on
Yes,
the Guilford Preservation Alliance Board of Directors. And to Dennis's left is Rob Vavasseur. And Rob is co-president. And I think, as I recall, a real important part of what became the walking tours. I met you actually when you were in the planning stages for that, when I was on the Economic Development Commission several years ago. So I understand that's been very, very successful. So before I begin, what I'd like to do, because I have you guys here that are involved with the Preservation Alliance, is to tell me, what is it? I mean, what is it that Preservation Alliance does? And what actually is your mission? What is it you're trying to accomplish in town?
Okay.
Who wants to start with that?
The basic mission is to protect the built and the unbuilt environment, meaning our natural resources. And that's basically it, is a protection mechanism. And we do that through lobbying for better zoning regulations and controls. But we also have a trust fund, the U. McKay Jones Trust Fund, that lends out at low interest rates to institutions or structures that need restoring.
Really?
For instance, we just recently lent money to the church in North Guilford, I believe the North Congregational Church, and we've lent money to the Episcopal Church.
North Guilford Church was, I think, redoing their steeple.
The steeple.
Yes,
Mhm.
the Congregational Church.
Yeah.
And also, historically, we've lent to fix up the Regicide Cellar and the bowling alley on Broad Street behind Dr. Lewis's home. There's an old wooden bowling alley. We lent them $25,000 to restore it at a low interest rate. We also give outright grants to help preserve and restore structures.
Okay, so that begs a few questions here. First, well, where does the money come from?
The the trust fund was started by U. McKay Jones by buying the King's North Star house on State Street when it was going to be sold for a real estate agency. And he went and bought it, and then he was on the board of directors of the GPA, and he said, now you have to pay me my money back. And so they ended up selling the house and making a profit, and they used that to start the trust fund. And the GPA was started in '81, so it's 33 years old this year. And I think the trust fund was started in '85. I'm not quite 100% sure about that. But it has done a lot of good.
Okay, so the next question is, what is the criteria that you use to have somebody qualify for whether it be a loan or a grant? What criteria do you use? What does the property or the structure have to look like or be in order to be qualified?
Well, it has to be architecturally significant or
Which means?
distinctive in architecture, outstanding, like all the churches in town have very great distinctive architecture. And then like the bowling alley was very unique. There isn't another one in the
I didn't know
town.
there was one.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a long wooden bowling structure and a bowling alley structure, and everybody in the neighborhood on Broad Street had their own bowling balls.
No
And
kidding.
the pins were there.
And
And
what time are we? What's the time
in the
frame?
1800s,
Yeah.
early 1900s, and they would get
That was
together
before
and they would have
Text messaging and video. You understand that, right?
they would have bowling parties, and everybody brought their own. They had their own balls to bring, and there would be somebody setting up the pins, off to the side. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
When during the duration of the loan, we asked them if each year, one weekend in October, we could open it to the public, and we did. and tons of people came to see it.
Now, the Guilford Preservation Alliance is not a town commission or a town committee, is it?
No,
not?
no.
It's a separate, distinct organization. How did it start? Who decided to have a Preservation Alliance group?
I couldn't name all the individuals. I wasn't here at the time. I know one who was the former owner of our home on Leeds Island Road, Priscilla Waters Norton. But a number of people like her who had been active in historic preservation in Guilford for a number of years in different organizations, like some of our house museum societies, decided that they wanted to create a society that would be completely focused on preservation values. And I wanted to add to what Shirley was saying, because we also have this focus on historic and architecturally significant architecture, and what people typically think of when they think of historic preservation. And the GPA was founded in part, a large part actually, to make sure that those types of buildings and the museums, which are another untold, outside of Guilford oftentimes, treasure of the town, are able to get coordinated together properly. We want to support their activities in any way we can, and make sure that we are supporting the idea of historic preservation as well in the town. So as Shirley was saying, we're working to help people with buildings that are important to take care of the fabric of the building, but we also want to make sure people are educated about and understand the mission of our house museums, and that historic preservation is a very important value that the town's had a long history with, and that we actually want to see passed on to the next generation. Like
And we have a very important historic commission in town.
Historic District Commission,
Yeah, I mean, that is a town commission.
yes.
Correct.
Are you on the same page with them? Are they on the same page with you? I mean, are you working in the same direction for the same purpose?
Basically, the
More or less?
values.
The values,
basically,
very
the
much.
values are the same.
Yeah.
But they have regulatory jurisdiction, we don't. And if anybody in the district has to change any exterior part of their home or anything that can be seen from the public right of way, they have to appear before the historic district, and they rule on their changes. We have no legal responsibility or,
You can't start or stop something.
No.
That's up to them.
no,
Yeah.
we do it through,
You're encouraging the preservation.
well, we actually were instrumental in getting both historic districts established. That was one of the things we accomplished over the 33 years. Plus, I just want to say Betty Brown was one of the original founders too.
mhm.
And I just love these men and women who started this organization. Anyhow, we established 2 state scenic roads, 77 and 146. We planted 450 trees in the borough of Guilford, which is the 23 streets that comprise the center of the town. We established the National Register District that also comprises the center of the town, as well as North Guilford and Leeds Island Road. So there are many, many accomplishments.
Now, when you see changes taking place, positive or negative, you're aware, I assume, or you try to be aware of everything that happens within your what you perceive to be your jurisdiction of what's important. Do you step in and try to offer some sort of suggestion or guidance, or stick your nose where maybe they don't want it to be?
We've been known to appear at a couple hearings.
No, surely I won't.
Well, years ago, we started what we called the Group of 7 nonprofits, which was the Alliance, the Garden Clubs, the Land Trust, the Foundation. I'm trying to think.
And others.
Oh, the house museums,
Keeping,
the Keeping Society and the Highland House. And we met with town officials every month for 2 years and worked with them to enact very good ordinances like the accessory apartment ordinance, regulation that's in effect that protects the outbuildings in Guilford, especially downtown Guilford. And, things like that. We worked hand in hand with the town officials, meaning the head of P&Z, the town planner, the first selectman, the town engineer, etc.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what your project is that we want people to know about, and then we're going to come back and I have some more questions about this, okay?
Okay.
So we're talking now about the fact that the Guilford Preservation Alliance board got together and decided that they thought that a visitor's information kiosk would be of benefit in a number of ways. Why don't you explain what those are?
Do you want me to go into that, Shirley?
Yeah, I think you should give the overview
Yeah, let me,
of how that started.
if I could just give you an overview, it actually blends in with where your last question was going, I think. GPA, like any preservation organization, oftentimes people think of as, they're getting in the way of development, they're trying to stop me from doing this. And to some degree, we certainly as citizens
I'm a real estate broker, I understand.
I do understand, but you also must realize too that it raises property values.
Guilford, so.
Yeah, it raises property values.
Districts raise property values.
Yeah, it raises property values. We want people to understand, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, but it's very much related to your question to Shirley earlier. It's actually very much a pro-development and a pro-economic vitality kind of a value to be promoting. And that's oftentimes not understood. So what we decided to do back 3 years ago was to launch something through GPA that was called the Heritage Tourism Initiative. And that was designed to make sure that Guilford was making, preservationists in Guilford had an opportunity to make an economic impact on the town. As I explained to you once when we met at the Economic Development Commission with Shirley 2 years ago. We believe that preservation itself has a contribution to make to building the economy here. And to do it in a way which is very, very green and very pro-environment, because it's not going to result in lots of pollution or traffic increases that'll cause a change in the quality of life in our town, but will make much better use of the existing resources which we uniquely have in town, which are all of these magnificent
Maybe the number
period
one
homes.
resource being the green.
The green is incomparable, but you also have the house museums with their wonderful structures and their memberships and people who maintain private homes. We have these magnificent woods and preservation that are being preserved by groups like the Guilford Land Conservation Trust, who do remarkable work. And we wanted to make sure visitors to town would come to town if they haven't been here before and see all of the different resources we have, some of which are built, like the historic structures, but others which are these beautiful natural resources which we want to share with visitors. When those people come to town, they hopefully will shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants. People will see their property values protected and strengthened by the attention people pay to the beautiful, irreplaceable historic structures in this town, and that will actually drive good things in your direction as a real estate broker, that you'll see people's property values are improved, the green will be strengthened by having people come to town. Yeah. So that's something that we really wanted to make sure people understood.
In the beginning, it was a concept and it was a notion that would happen, and you actually have some time now and some experience with it, so you know that it has happened.
Actually, it's
but
been
I understand,
around.
Dennis, you had something to do with this in the very beginning.
Yep.
Yes.
And you're a board member. You're a history teacher.
I'm a history teacher, and I have some, I know the talent of our students out there, so the board thought it would be a good idea to put something out there to try to get heritage tourism, the idea of it on the ground and visual. So we developed a walking tours, and I say we, the students and I developed walking tours. We spent a few weeks in the library doing some research, looked at some other guides that had been done in the past, talked to some experts, everyone from Yale professors to people from Connecticut Trust to Historic Preservation and our own local historians, and put together 2 walking tours of downtown Guilford and sent out advertisements, developed a web page, tweet on Twitter, and have a Facebook page, and have an active tour that we successfully have done for 2 years.
Yeah. Now, at the time, I think, when this all happened, Megan was a student in one of your history classes.
Well, she had been, because I decided to use the high school students. I teach at the middle school, and I thought it would be better to get the kids, especially as they had been taking some of the wonderful courses up at the high school. They have great courses of U.S. history that incorporate local history, and their understanding it gets deeper as they continue to learn. So I took advantage of the continued learning they had and brought them into the classroom. And oftentimes they do projects on local history in their high school courses. Yeah. So that
what concerns did you have? I'm sure you discussed this at the time about safety for students dealing with strangers on the green.
Well, the concerns, I think...
It's an awful way to...
Yeah, that's a wonderful...
But I'm sure it's a concern.
The wonderful thing today is that everybody...
It's a crazy world.
But everybody has a phone, and I think initially we developed a buddy system. So we put out, for the first year, we only put out a tour when we had 2 guides to do it. And but at the second year, we realized that it's not as much of an issue. You're in sight, you're of mostly state highways and roads, there's people around, they're waving at you, the neighbors know you're there, and everybody has a phone, and we really haven't had a problem. We had, we thought about, breaking ankles, walking off the curbs and things like that, and traffic. It does get a little tight sometimes if we have a big tour, but the students have kind of found a way to manage the people, which is a big issue when you're giving walking tours, and people are used to seeing us, so that the neighbors in the historic district know that we're going to be there and are patient with us if we're maybe, you know, on the little edge of the road, or we're blocking their driveway while the student's giving this great description
I've
of a
seen
house.
your groups, so I think it's great.
They
Megan,
got
how'd
an
you get in?
award. They got an award. They got
Yeah, we
Yankee
got the
Magazine.
Yankee Magazine Small Town Walking Tour Award for 2013 last year. So we got.
Is this a unique? Are tours unique, or do they exist in other towns?
They exist in other towns, but we're kind of I would just say a cutting edge. If you look for us online, if you Google Connecticut walking tours, we're right there. Mostly bigger cities, but as we know, Guilford has a resources, and we have I think we're number 2 or 3 of pre-19th century houses in New England. So we're right up there with Salem and Newburyport and Newport and places like that. If you're into history and architecture, we're right in the top 3 or top 4 in New England. So that's one of the reasons we thought it would be a great idea to have them here.
All right, Megan, how'd you get involved?
Well, after I was in Mr. Culleton's 8th grade history class, I started taking more history classes at the high school.
What year are you now?
I'm currently a senior at Guilford High School. And last year I took AP US history, so I was able to get even more into United States history and how Guilford has impacted American history as a whole. But when I was a freshman, the applications came out to be a historic Guilford walking tour guide, and Mr. Culleton encouraged me to apply, and there was an interview process. And eventually, I think 10 of us were chosen to be walking tour guides for the first year. And we started as soon as school got out doing research and putting together the tours, deciding what houses we would go and explore and talk about, what routes we would take. And from there, it's just sort of grown.
And typically, who do you have in your group that you take on the tour?
Typically, there are about 6 people.
I mean, local
on a tour.
people, or out of town, or out of state?
The first
Is it
year
international?
Actually, yes. The first year we had quite a few local people and people who were really interested in finding out what was going on and what we were doing. But I've noticed that over the past year, of the second year of the tours, we've been getting a lot of international people and a lot of people from New York as well.
Yeah,
and
Westchester, New
Massachusetts.
York, outside of Hartford, a lot of the people come down from Hartford and Massachusetts. And we're hoping to begin to be a place to get off the highway for.
Yeah.
Get off the highway and take a look at Guilford.
And once they're done with the tour, I'm sure the merchants in town can appreciate the fact that
Exactly.
they're in town.
We
It's
hope
up to them now to bring them in the door, but
Right.
My favorite was the first year. There was a family that after the tour, they went into the bookstore and bought a book, and they went to the candy store and got ice cream. And they were sitting on the green after the tour, and they told me how wonderful it was. And I'm saying, well, you're why we're here. You're doing exactly what we want. Go to the coffee shop. Many times they go back to the house museums and explore them. And we're hoping that begins to feed the house museums because, I would say every so many customers at the house museums becomes a member and decides to contribute, annually to these places. And those are the things we're looking for.
what issues do you run into as far as the size of the group that you have to? I'm sure that's a consideration.
Especially the first opening week.
I mean, half a dozen people is one thing, but I've seen groups
Yes,
more like 15 and 20.
We've had 15 to 20 person groups come through before, and with 2 guides the first year, it was a little bit easier to maneuver. Sometimes we would split the group in half, and one group would take off before the next one, just so that we could keep the groups a little smaller. But now that it's sort of becoming one guide, as we all become more comfortable giving the tours, we usually have to take it a little bit slower to make sure we round everybody up and make sure everyone's hearing us. That's another issue, having everyone be able to hear the information.
All right, now if you folks are just tuning in, I'm talking to representatives from the Guilford Preservation Alliance, and I have Shirley, who is the co-president, along with Rob, and Dennis, who is a board member and a middle school teacher, history teacher in the town of Guilford, and Megan, who is a student and one of the tour guides for the walking tours. So that's what this is all about. But the whole purpose for our preliminary discussion now is to lead into what you would like to have happen next, and that's the next level of perhaps development of this whole process, and that's the kiosk that you guys are planning. So first of all, let's get a shot of the kiosk, Donald, if we can. We have a chart here that shows some pictures, and one of you can talk about what it is and what do you hope that it will be used for. There we go.
The kiosk was the second concrete idea that came out of a series of 5 workshops and forums that we've had to promote heritage tourism. And part of that forum are representatives from 26 nonprofits in town. So we've built up a huge consensus among town officials and nonprofits to support this heritage tourism initiative. And the second concrete idea, the first concrete idea was the walking tours. And the second concrete idea was to have an information kiosk. And we spent a year locating a property for it, and the final decision and the final location is now approved, gone through all the regulatory process, and it's the community center.
Why not the green?
No one wanted it on the green.
I wanted it on the green.
Well, you weren't on the green committee. Anyhow, I think it's better where it is. And
Do you?
it has facilities, the community center is open, there's some parking, it's next to the coffee shop. And Russell Campaign was the architect we hired to design it, and I think he's done a very sleek design that is very much in conformity with the design of the
What's the
community
size of that?
center. I think it's 11 by 9, and it has a window that will open up and panels that we can put educational material in. We do not want things plastered all over it. And he's made it very maintenance-free, and it'll be computer
Enabled.
Wi-Fi activated, or whatever you say, that people can connect to it at home.
Oh.
And the information will be available as far as what our historic resources are, all about the house museums, all about our natural resources, cultural resources, retail information, eating,
Now,
lodging.
will commercial businesses in town be able to have a presence in the kiosk as well? Is that, when you
No.
think of a kiosk, you think of,
Well, they'll be on the in the computer.
And
Okay.
a big,
Web.
big screen, big panels,
I see.
computer panels that people can have information on there and have access to it, touch screens and things like that.
okay. Well, it sounds good. It can also serve, I assume, as a ticket booth for walking
It's
tour?
meant to be a gathering place for people to buy their tickets, get information. We hope to have it staffed 5 months, well, from May till the end of September, beginning of October, 5 days a week, by volunteers who we will have to train. We're hoping to get a lot of seniors and high school kids and retired people, or anybody who has an interest in Guilford's heritage. And we can train them, and they, would have information to hand out, maps and brochures, etc. And people can use.
Let's talk about the money, because you have to get some money together. Is this in the town budget?
Oh no, this is the GPA is paying for all of this.
It has nothing to do with the taxpayers of the town of Guilford?
No, the
Wow.
GPA is paying for this.
And
We
what kind of
have
numbers are you talking about?
Approximately 90,000. We have 25 in the bank, 25,000 due the generosity of a donor.
One donor?
I think I can say his name, Boynton Schmidt. His wife used to be first selectman years ago.
Yeah,
In
Marty
the
Smith.
70s, Marge Schmidt,
I
yes.
remember, yeah.
And the kiosk is going to be named in her honor. He would like that. And then we have grants that we're going to write and go around begging.
And who are you
Asking
going to beg
different
to?
groups.
You got pencils on the green or what?
Some banks and the Rotary and the Guilford Foundation. Guilford Foundation has been very supportive of us. They helped us with our third big workshop. We produced this document telling Guilford's story. We had consultants come, and we met with the public and Dennis's class and high school students and the 26 nonprofits, and all in preparation for what would be in the kiosk. It was a planning process.
Okay.
And the Connecticut Humanities sponsored this. We had a $28,000 grant with in-kind service money and actual money from the Connecticut Humanities and the Guilford Foundation.
Now,
So-
this is something obviously that's very important to continue or to develop the whole concept and to get this be, a meeting point, as you mentioned, and an area for distribution of information, which is probably more important. What do you see next? I mean, what happens with all? What do you hope will happen with this? And why spend $90,000 unless you have an idea of what you think the benefit of that will be?
Do you want to speak further about that?
I'll speak a little bit. Well, already, things are happening. If you come to Guilford today, or we'll say this summer, and want to do something, we have a Segway tour, we have a Grass Island tour, we have 5 house museums to visit, we have a walking tour. Last year, Megan developed a bus tour of Guilford, about a 90-minute to a 2-hour bus tour of all of Guilford, and we're going to have that for something to do. Just yesterday, a friend of mine came in and said, Dennis, I was thinking of maybe doing like a photography, outdoor photography classes in Guilford. Would that be something that would take away from your business? And I said, no, this is exactly what we want. We want people to come in, and the more, just like restaurants, the more the merrier. The more restaurants you have, the more come in. So we want to make it Guilford to be a destination for people to come. And as Rob will tell you about heritage tourism, or tourism by itself, every dollar spent gets $7 return. And so if people start to look at saying, maybe if we invest a little bit here, a little bit comes back. And so we're beginning to do that. And so we're kind of layering. We're beginning to do this. We're beginning to give people reason to get off the highway and come here. And wonderful reasons, educational reasons, heritage. We're involving people like the Shoreline Arts Alliance and people like that who also are wanting to do cultural and heritage type things to bring people to town.
And Megan won an award for scouting, her gold award for the bus tours.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
And the house tours too, and that was a wonderful accomplishment. The house tours are things that we're very delighted to support whenever they happen throughout the
Well,
town.
I give you guys a lot of credit because I've been around town in business for 40 years, and I've been a member of the chamber almost all of that time. And the chamber has talked about embellishing tourism in the town of Guilford for years. Al DiMarzio is a former president of the Chamber of Commerce, and he's on camera right here. He can tell you this has been in discussion for a long time, but it sort of started and stopped and started and stopped and started and stopped. But you guys are moving it along. I give you a lot of credit for that.
And we work with the Chamber and the Guilford Green Merchants. They're part of those 26 groups that we've been working with for almost 3 years now.
But part of that process, you should know, Tony, has been a very deliberate decision by GPA to do this on a very professional, best practices basis. And so what we did at the very beginning was we hired the top consultant for heritage tourism development at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And she's come up and led 3 different workshops out of Nashville, where she works from her office there. And those are the workshops that Shirley's referred to several times that have led to the most recent workshop, which was the Kiosk development workshop. And out of that, we came up with a 5-year strategic plan to develop heritage tourism in Guilford and an assessment of what tourism needed to do in Guilford, the kind of infrastructure improvements, more places for people to spend the night. Because if you get people to spend a night, you increase the multiplier effect
that's an issue, obviously.
hugely in terms of what you would get from day trippers.
I got some ideas on the West End, by the way.
Do you? Well, here we are.
A zone for a hotel
I
down
won't
there.
bring that in.
So it's been actually it's been a very carefully thought through planning process and using experiences that have worked around the country. So I think the reason things might have stopped and started before is that we haven't had the benefit, as we did through the generosity of Mr. Schmidt, to have funds to actually pay for and get the guidance and the encouragement of a true nationally recognized expert in how to make this happen and how to do it right. And I think that's why it's moved forward, is because we've been able to fund and not spend all of our time trying to figure out how are we going to fund and get the resources together so we can start. Through his generosity, we've had those funds and we've been able to just focus on doing the work. And I believe that's the only real difference as to why things started and stopped before and why they're moving forward now.
The fact that you're involving high school students, I think is great also.
And we pay them.
Yeah.
They get paid for this.
Yeah.
I forgot how much.
Well, they get paid more than minimum, we'll say.
Okay.
But the real trick, and that was part of the lessons that we had, is getting the next generation. We have this wonderful place that we live in, and how do we keep it? Or maybe they bring it somewhere else. Maybe someday they move to some other town and bring it. But they, I would just say, kudos to the high school, because they make learning local history a really important part of their learning.
Also, in the 4th grade, the Guilford Preservation Alliance 20 years ago introduced early Guilford Days and financed it and then turned it over to the school. And they have now in the 4th grade, they have a whole year curriculum of Guilford history. And then they have these 4 days where they visit all the house museums and have hand-on activities. So,
Well, it's great. What's next for you, Megan? You're a senior.
I am a senior. I'm still waiting to hear back from a few of my colleges that I've applied to. I applied to 8 in total. But I'm hoping to major in music education because I am a singer.
Music education.
Music education. But of course, this summer before I leave, I will be coordinating the bus tours.
She'll be in
and
charge of the bus
walking
tours this summer.
Yep.
She'll be helping out with the scheduling and both the workers and training of new people. And last year we were able to put another student in charge of the guide, so they get a little bit more than just being the guide. They get that next level of being a little bit into management and relieving me of responsibilities, because I never realized that students don't respond to emails. If you send them an email, you have to text them first.
Read your email.
To read the email. So I
know that feeling. 3 kids myself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's great. But I think that this has got to look great on your resume, too.
Yeah, receiving my gold award for all of my work with the bus tours.
The award or not, just to be a part of something as
It's been a great
substantial as this.
experience, and I wrote about it for my college essay.
Oh, wonderful.
So it was a wonderful experience, and it taught me a lot, not just about Guilford history, but about being a leader, about being a better person, and really being passionate about something.
All right, if somebody's watching right now and they're so excited about what they heard, and they want to take out their checkbook right now and send you a check,
Please
how do
do.
they do that?
just make it out to the Guilford Preservation Alliance, Box 199, Guilford.
All right, and you'll be doing other publicity other than this, I assume.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
We also want to give a plug to the railroad station, old buildings. There's the water tower and the engine house that are owned by Amtrak, but we're trying to pressure Amtrak to restore them. And Harry Haskell and Bill Mack and Ellen Ebert and Ellie Green have been doing that. They're former members or members of our board. And this Friday, a photo exhibit is going to go up at the train station telling the history of the train station and all the buildings involved, etc. So I would encourage people to go down and look at that display. The photo
And
display.
Dempsey,
Oh, Dempsey, I forgot
Yes.
Dempsey, thank you. What's her last name? She's not been on the board, so I don't
Don't
know
know.
Yeah,
Dempsey.
Dempsey and I were on.
What's Dempsey's last name?
phone in, Dempsey.
We were on the Blight Ordinance Committee.
Yes.
On the
Oh,
Blight
okay.
Ordinance.
Peter's wife.
Okay.
Peter's gonna shoot me.
Well,
Anyhow.
I've done longer
You did
than we
a
thought we
great
were going to
job.
do. It's
Thank
already
you.
10 of 5.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're
Thank
going to get you
you.
guys out of here. I know you have to leave, Megan.
I do.
So I appreciate all. Rob, thank you for everything that you've
Thank you.
done before, during, and now after, hopefully.
Thanks
and
very much.
Dennis, continue motivating your students to move up into stuff like this. Megan, lots of luck in whatever you do next year.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. And Shirley, great seeing you again
Thank
and
you.
everything that you do. And what's interesting is not only do you have somebody who's got an interest in history here, the history of the town, but also has spent a number of years as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so she knows the ins and outs of the regulations, which is going to
And
help as
planning.
well.
Yes, and the plan.
Well,
Good
with that, I
planning.
also want to thank our crew. We have Sam is over there doing sound. Thank you, Sam. We appreciate it. Donald Beckler is directing, as he usually does for most of my programs. And Al DiMarzio has volunteered his time today to be on camera. With that, this is Tony Fapiano. Thank you for watching. If you have any interest or any questions, you'd like to pursue this further, go to their website, which I believe is guilfordpreservation.org.
Preservation Alliance.
Yep.
Guilford Preservation Alliance.
Oh, then I got it wrong on the credits. So don't pay attention to the credits. guilfordpreservationalliance.org. Okay, with that, this is Tony Fapiano. Thank you for watching.